Put on your tinfoil hats, we're going to Antarctica. A continent of the world where there is no country, no government, no people who have been living for centuries but is full of conspiracies. Its remoteness and extremeness pretty much lend themselves to flights of imagination. After all, none of planet Earth's terra firma is left so barely explored as the white continents. But in today's episode, we are not going to go into the recent satellite images that have revealed some pyramid-like structures emerging from the melting ice in Antarctica. We also won't touch on the fact that the world's elites have been making trips to Antarctica recently, and no one knows the reason. And of course, let's forget Buzz Aldrin's trip to the South Pole, what he tweeted while he was up there, or anything related to the retired Navy SEAL whistleblower, identified as Spartan 1, who ufologist Linda Moulton Howe interviewed. In today's episode, we just delve into one of the most mysterious explorations of all time, Operation High Jump. In 1946, Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd Jr., an American naval officer and explorer, led an expedition to Antarctica called Operation High Jump after World War II to conduct scientific studies and establish a research base in the region. However, many have questioned the motives for such a mission and have speculated that the real reason he was there was to find a hidden Nazi base that had been long rumored to have been established in the area. Some believe that Byrd, while there, encountered something he couldn't explain, which forced him to abandon his mission entirely. The story goes that a journal was found belonging to him, and inside of those pages, he described encountering a fleet of flying saucers while in Antarctica, which not only were able to surpass his fleet's speed and outmaneuver him, but supposedly also killed many of his men. Such rumors and conspiracy theories have circulated for years, but now, one of the rare people who ever touched the edge of the truth, the last surviving member of that Enigma expedition, reveals the truth about Antarctica.
There comes a time when the rationality of men must fade into insignificance, and one must accept the inevitability of the truth. I am not at liberty to disclose the following documentation at this writing. Perhaps it shall never see the light of public scrutiny, but I must do my duty and record here for all to read one day.
So, what exactly happened out in the icy regions of the Arctic during Operation High Jump? Was it merely a research mission, or was there something more to it? Join us as we dig deep into Byrd's exploration to the end of the world, unveiling the mysteries of Antarctica and exposing all cover-up. Without any delay, let's get started. Admiral Richard E. Byrd is among America's most honored American heroes and pioneering explorers. As a 1912 U.S. Naval Academy graduate, understanding the importance of future air travel, Richard Byrd opted to become a naval aviator in 1917. Along with co-pilot Floyd Bennett on May 9, 1926, Byrd braved a 16-hour flight in a tri-motor monoplane circling over the Arctic tundra for 13 minutes before heading back to complete the first landmark journey to the North Pole, covering 1,335 nautical miles. Both he and Bennett were instantly recognized as heroes and awarded America's top Medal of Honor for their accomplishment, although researchers have disputed his claim as the first to fly over the North Pole. The following year, in 1927, Byrd, Bennett, and 3 others were among several aviator teams that made the first non-stop transatlantic flight from the U.S. to France, though flying solo Charles Lindbergh became the very first. But little more than a month later, Byrd and his crew were at it again, crash landing this time on Omaha Beach, Normandy, on July 1st. In 1928, Richard Byrd led his first Antarctic expedition by ship and planes, taking photographs and conducting geological surveying. On November 28, 1929, Byrd and his crew made the first flight over the South Pole, lasting almost 19 hours. Immediately following that historic feat, the explorer became the youngest admiral in U.S. naval history at age 41. After making his second Antarctic expedition in 1934, spending 5 months alone at the Advanced Base Camp, in 1938, Byrd visited Hamburg, Germany. and was actually invited to participate in the 1938-1939 Neuschwabenland Antarctic expedition. But with pre-war tensions rising over Hitler's increasing aggression, Admiral Byrd declined the offer. Instead, in 1939, Byrd led his third and largest South Pole expedition that included 125 men, the first fully funded and sponsored by Washington. But with World War looming on the horizon, a decision was made to eventually abort the expedition, and both East and West Base camp personnel sailed their ships into Boston Harbor in May 1941, while war in Europe was already raging. During World War II, Admiral Byrd was confidential advisor to both the Commander-in-Chief and top naval commander Admiral Ernest J. King, given assignments in both the European and Pacific theaters. Shortly after the war, through U.S. intelligence services, Operation Paperclip was spawned, granting safe passage for relocation to America more than 1,500 German scientists, engineers, and skilled technicians for immediate employment. Despite destroying evidence, the U.S. government learned of Germany's advances militarily and the extraterrestrial assistance that enabled them. So the program was developed to jointly gain an unsurpassable military advantage, while jump-starting a fledgling aerospace program, as well as deny Germany, the Soviet Union, and the rest of the world the German brainpower. To Washington's consternation, thousands of scientists, engineers, and Third Reich military and political leaders were never accounted for. Neither were scores of German submarines. Inside sources suspected many had escaped to the German underground base in Antarctica, to seek and destroy perhaps the enemy's final refuge. Admiral Richard Byrd was the natural selection to lead the military expedition called Operation High Jump. Billed as a reconnaissance mission to establish the research base Little America 4, the operation hit the high seas in December 1946. When encountering the press, Byrd tended to be more truthful than his government preferred, and just prior to embarking, he openly stated that High Jump was a military expedition to look for some bases. By January 1947, Byrd's Navy Task Force 68 fleet, consisting of 4,700 Navy and Marine personnel, 13 warships, including an aircraft carrier, a battleship, and a destroyer, and 33 aircraft, had reached their icy destination and set up their base camp, from which to locate and take out the secret Nazi base. Never before had such a vast operation been deployed to the southernmost continent. And during the first few weeks of settling in and engaging in reconnaissance and surveying, outside of some close calls under extreme harsh climate conditions, everything seemed to be progressing as scheduled. While on 2 reconnaissance occasions, the flight navigation and radio equipment on Byrd's aircraft failed while flying over a plush green valley, lakes, and rivers free of ice in 70-degree F temperatures. This strange anomaly has fueled speculation over the hollow Earth theory. After nearly 2 months on assignment, suddenly out of nowhere, the Naval Task Force was attacked by combat power and conditions never before witnessed on a battlefront. Seemingly springing up out of nowhere from the water, emerged a number of saucer-shaped craft that exerted a force field shield that appeared to be controlled by anti-gravity UFOs. In the mayhem, 3 U.S. ships were sunk, including the destroyer. The 6-month operation was forced to abruptly abandon its mission. This was alien technology in action. As the defeated task force began its return to the U.S., Admiral Byrd's initial press report from Chile explained that his mission had to be aborted due to taking in too many casualties. The Chilean newspaper El Mercurio ran a March 5, 1947 article stating, Admiral Byrd declared today that it was imperative for the United States to initiate immediate defense measures against hostile regions. The Admiral further stated that he didn't want to frighten anyone unduly, but that it was a bitter reality that in case of a new war, the continental United States would be attacked by flying objects which could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. Admiral Byrd repeated the above points of view, resulting from his personal knowledge gathered both at the North and South Poles, before a news conference held for International News Service. Byrd arrived in America from his failed operation on April 14, 1947. Again, when he later testified before Congress, the Admiral reiterated his alarming warning.
In case of a new war, the U.S. would be attacked by fighters that are able to fly from one pole to the other with incredible speed.
Exactly what he meant is open to question. But what's clear is the advanced aeronautic technology his task force encountered makes space travel very conceivable, suggesting that he was either attacked by an alien force or an advanced German air superiority aided by extraterrestrials. Definitely, there can be no doubt that the German military in Antarctica had acquired advanced space-age technologies from an alien civilization, or a hostile extraterrestrial force existed under the ice, or a joint combination of both violently repelled the mighty American naval fleet. Byrd's enigmatic assertion leaves open the possibility that his opponent could navigate from pole to pole through a hollow Earth passageway, surmising that World War III would likely be eventually fought at the poles. After the Soviet Union broke up in 1991, the KGB released records confirming that High Jump's actual mission was indeed to capture and destroy that hidden underground German military base. Perhaps the most accurate and detailed account of Nazi contact and connection to alien civilizations and advanced interspace technology is featured in the 44-minute 2006 Russian documentary Third Reich, Operation UFO. National Geographic featured Byrd's high jump story entitled Our Navy Explores Antarctica in its October 1947 issue, but no sooner was it published, the U.S. government immediately pulled virtually every issue of the magazine from circulation. Coincidentally, in July that same year, the UFO crash in Roswell, New Mexico, was also quickly covered up, like Byrd's violently close encounter with extraterrestrial technology at the South Pole. Roswell allowed reverse engineering to aid the Black Ops programs to begin developing their own anti-gravity spacecraft. A probable UFO crash in Germany's Bavaria in the summer of 1936 helped give the Nazis a full decade head start. According to an Admiral Byrd 1947 diary, the renowned polar explorer discovered an advanced extraterrestrial civilization inhabiting a hollowed-out center of the Earth during an Arctic expedition dated February 19, 1947. Among the most incredible stories in history, for good reason, it's been ignored by the U.S. government but scooped up by Hollow Earth aficionados as their biblical proof. February 1947 must have been quite a year for the polar birdman. While during his well-documented Operation High Jump, the Admiral was getting his ass kicked by aliens or Nazis equipped with alien technology at the South Pole in February 1947, at the other end of the Earth's North Pole, according to Byrd's secret diary, he was also entering the magical alien world of Agartha for a sobering sit-down chat with the advanced civilization's master, warning him that if humans continue their evil warlike ways, doom and gloom awaits.
Our interest rightly begins just after your race exploded the first atomic bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan. It was that alarming time we sent our flying machines, the Flugelrads, to your surface world to investigate what your race had done. You see, we have never interfered before in your race's wars and barbarity. But now we must, for you have learned to tamper with a certain power that is not for your man, mainly that of atomic energy. Our emissaries have already delivered message to the power of your world, and yet they do not heed.
Apparently, the government knew about Agartha before Byrd. And most likely, that's also why the government ordered Byrd to remain silent for what he witnessed during his Arctic assignment. March 11, 1947.
I have just attended a staff meeting at the Pentagon. I have stated fully my discovery and the message from the Master. All is duly recorded. The President has been advised. I am now detained for several hours, 6 hours 39 minutes to be exact. I am interviewed intently by top security forces and a medical team. It was an ordeal. I am placed under strict control via the national security provisions of this United States of America. I am ordered to remain silent in regard to all that I have learned on the behalf of humanity. Incredible. I am reminded that I am a military man, and I must obey orders.
Though it's highly unlikely that Admiral Byrd flew to the hollow Earth from the North Pole in February 1947, supposedly on his final Antarctic expedition little more than a year before his death, the renowned American explorer is reported to have reached the South Polar opening during a January 1956 flight. Perhaps having contacted the advanced hollow Earth race already on previous journeys to the poles, or minimally seen for himself that warm green areas with ice-free lakes exist near and beyond the South Pole, and first-hand witnessed UFO battle capability at the outset of his final trip to Antarctica in November 1955. Admiral Byrd stated, "This is the most important expedition in the history of the world." That's a pretty big statement. We can infer that he is drawing on his already amazing experiences flying over the poles and most probably beyond. On February 5th, 1956, several weeks after his highly anticipated journey, Byrd announced on the radio to American media back home.
On January 3rd, members of the United States expedition accomplished a flight of 2,700 miles from the base at McMurdo Sound, which is 400 miles west of the South Pole, and penetrated a land extent of 2,300 miles beyond the pole.
If he actually traveled another 2,300 miles beyond the South Pole and not flown into the hollow rim opening, but kept flying on a straight course over Antarctica, Byrd and his crew would have nearly reached the middle of the Atlantic Ocean near the equator. And we know that didn't happen. So, the most logical conclusion is the 2,300 miles beyond the South Pole must have taken his plane into the Earth's interior. On March 13th, the day he returned to America from his final polar expedition less than a year before his death, the great explorer referred to Antarctica as that enchanted continent in the sky, land of everlasting mystery. Ray Palmer, editor of Flying Saucer magazine, responding to the preponderance of UFO sightings at the poles, concluded this about the pair of flights Admiral Byrd made over each pole. The flying saucers could come from these two unknown lands beyond the poles. It is the opinion of the editors of Flying Saucers magazine that the existence of these lands cannot be disproved by anyone, considering the facts of the two expeditions which we have outlined. Richard Evelyn Byrd's final diary entry is dated December 30th, 1956.
These last few years elapsed since 1947 have not been kind. I now make my final entry in this singular diary. In closing, I must state that I have faithfully kept this matter secret as directed all these years. It has been completely against my values of moral right. Now I seem to sense the long night coming on, and this secret will not die with me. But as all truth shall, it will triumph, and so it shall. This can be the only hope for mankind. I have seen the truth, and it has quickened my spirit and has set me free. I have done my duty toward the monstrous military-industrial complex. Now, the long night begins to approach, but there shall be no end. Just as the long night of the Arctic ends, the brilliant sunshine of truth shall come again, and those who are of darkness shall fall in its light. For I have seen that land beyond the pole, that center of the great unknown.
His radio announcement was never followed up in the press because the government obviously suppressed any further publicity covering his wondrous discovery 2,300 miles beyond the pole. Obviously, from his final entry, he wanted to share everything about his spectacular travels and life-changing experiences. But by 1956, Washington was long committed to carrying out its sinister policy of secrecy, lies, and even murder to deprive Americans and all of humanity of the truth. Like President Eisenhower's prophetic warning in his 1961 farewell address, Byrd saw firsthand the monstrous military-industrial complex. If an intelligent civilization that only knows peace and compassion lives in the Earth's interior, and we were told the truth back then. It would have ended the Cold War and undoubtedly changed the fate of mankind forever. As an honest individual, Byrd must have suffered excruciating inner conflict and pain. Keeping what he knew secret from the rest of the world, it had to have eaten him up inside. Limited to speaking only in vague, lofty innuendo and unable to fully disclose what he'd seen. Perhaps that literally did kill him, as the American hero died less than 2.5 months after his final diary entry. And there is no doubt that his reticence to disclose had much more to do with the tragic fate that befell his former boss, colleague, and friend James Forrestal than it did following orders as a military officer. The Secretary of the Navy that sent Byrd down to Antarctica on his 1947 military high-jump mission was James Forrestal, a one-time naval aviator himself, a successful businessman, and in September 1947, the first U.S. Secretary of Defense. He was privy to all the secret cover-ups of the federal government, from the UFO phenomenon to the secrecy of the U.S. Nazi and alien space technology. 1947 was a busy and eventful year, as Majestic 12 was also formed in July, per an executive order by then-President Truman. For those who don't know, Majestic 12 is the top-secret committee comprised of scientists, military leaders, and government insiders invited on a need-to-know basis, designated to oversee and conceal all alien phenomena and documentation. And James Forrestal was a member. Because the Secretary of Defense advocated an open policy of disclosure to his fellow Americans and was both a supporter and ally of Admiral Byrd, his push to reveal the existence of UFOs and the deceptive machinations of the FDR-Truman wartime administrations became a thorn in the side of the rogue government. Moreover, the forceful Forrestal also strongly opposed globalism and the establishment of the State of Israel, hence his smear campaign and ultimate demise. Forrestal's uncompromising moral high ground stance had to be neutralized, as he threatened to expose the criminal cabal operating at the time as the federal government, having compiled a multi-thousand-page diary that the New York Times claimed could fill a file cabinet, revealing all the inside secrecy he'd been observing. By the end of March 1949, Truman fired him and took possession of his diary, and within a week, in early April 1949, against his will, America's first Secretary of Defense was committed to Bethesda Naval Hospital for mental exhaustion. He was branded mentally unstable, and that was all that was necessary to arrange, a few weeks later, his suicided murder on May 22, 1949, claiming that he had plunged to his death from a small 16th-floor hospital window. The flawed death investigation was concealed for 55 years before it was released in 2004. A heavily redacted top-secret government document with Majestic's fingerprints written all over it stated, "The untimely death of Secretary Forrestal was deemed necessary and regrettable." Both Forrestal and Byrd wanted to reveal to the outer world the truth about the interior world and the advanced extraterrestrials. And Forrestal's murder had to be taken as a direct threat to Admiral Byrd. Open your mouth, and you'll be next. So, in March 1957, Admiral Richard Byrd went to his grave less than 8 years later, still holding on to all his incredible secrets. And other than uttering his few ambiguously suggestive and poetic statements, providing only glimpses of the deeper truth, Explorer Byrd's death was intended to be the nail in the coffin against any further hollow earth disclosure, at least from a government insider source. With the creation of Majestic and then NASA a year after Byrd's death, the assigned official gatekeeper of scientific truth was firmly, compartmentally in place, ensuring that the solid spherical Earth hoax would be maintained. And another half-dozen years after Byrd's passing, the same rogue government was free to once again get away with another murder, silencing the last honest U.S. president trying to represent the people's best interests. But now, we are living in the 21st century, when all cover-up has never been more exposed than ever. One of the secrets revealed is specifically related to the last survivor of any of Byrd's pre-World War II polar journeys, which caught the public imagination and made the explorer a much decorated national hero. Johnson, in fact, is most likely the last living member of any pre-war polar expedition by any country. At 19, Johnson was the youngest member of Byrd's 1939 expedition to Antarctica aboard the USS Bear, a 19th-century dual steam-powered and sailing ship. He went back with Byrd in 1946 for Operation High Jump, during which he parachuted onto the polar ice, which he later said seemed to him the quietest place on Earth. In a steel-hulled icebreaker, he also joined another U.S. Navy expedition to Antarctica, Operation Windmill, in 1948.
Everything we did in that ice down there was exciting, because it was never the same thing twice, trying to explore and going in and out of these inlets. I can remember 5 times, in his first expedition, when I didn't know if I was going to get out of the ice.
The son of a chief warrant officer in San Diego, Johnson was a Sea Scout who trained on sailing ships as a teen. The summer he turned 16, he was one of the Sea Scouts aboard the Pacific Queen, a 300-foot square rigger, for a 15-day cruise. After the ship was becalmed, that expedition turned into one of 67 days, with its crew living on severe rations as rescuers frantically searched for the ship. 2 years later, he joined the Navy, serving on a battleship before he volunteered for Byrd's 1939 expedition. His experience sailing helped him land one of the coveted positions. Johnson was in the Navy from 1937 to 1956, retiring from Naval Station Mayport as a chief boatswain's mate. He then worked for the Postal Service until 1990. After 66 years of marriage, his wife Ruth Johnson died of cancer in 2003. He met his wife Mildred, who survives him, at a cancer survivors group after her husband's death. At his home in East Arlington, there was a place of honor reserved for polar penguin Pete, a penguin Johnson took with him after one expedition and then had stuffed. It was a reminder of his journeys to the bottom of the earth. And in his 100th birthday party, Johnson finally unveiled the truth about Byrd's exploration of the poles, saying that Antarctica is not what we're being told.
That's quite a place. It's different from anything else, that's for sure. It is a wonderful place down there.
Besides Johnson's revelation, advanced technology is also helping us unlock many other mysteries of this unknown land. For instance, Google Earth photographs have revealed 2 large openings at the surface that some say lead to underground tunnels and subglacial rivers flowing in an environment supporting temperatures of 60 to 70 degrees F. The verdict is still out on whether this subglacial aquifer system was formed naturally or whether a human footprint inside these expansive inner chambers and underground caverns reveal a vast, comprehensive network of tunnels, military bases, possible cities, or even extraterrestrial UFO bases. Fueling the latter theory, in 2012, another strange anomaly was found on Google Earth of an odd 14.5-mile long, 4.5-mile wide structure that appears to either be a monster-sized UFO lodged under the ice or a secret camouflaged research station. Russian UFO researcher Valentin Degtyarev found in 2015 yet another strange image on the February 2012 Google Earth that appears to be 4 tanks covered in snow lined up facing what could be a crashed 204 wide and 40 tall UFO. It doesn't stop there. In 2018, a satellite image captured what appeared to be a condensed water trail from an aircraft or contrail that could only have been produced by something traveling at incredibly high speeds. The trail extended the entire length of the Earth longitudinally from the North Pole to the South Pole, which is 12,000 miles. According to experts, the maximum length of time that a contrail can maintain its shape is 30 minutes, but most dissipate in less than that time. This particular trail, however, was visible for much longer, suggesting that it was not a normal contrail. While some have speculated that this trail could be evidence of extraterrestrial activity, others have suggested that it could have been caused by a secret military aircraft or other experimental technology. Whatever the cause, the image has sparked renewed interest in the story of Operation High Jump and the possibility of encountering extraterrestrial life in Antarctica. In addition, note that even if put Byrd's Operation High Jump aside, Antarctica remains the hub for conspiracies. Why is that? Well, it's partly because of the Antarctic Treaty. The treaty states that Antarctica shall only be used for peaceful purposes, to promote international scientific cooperation, and to set aside disputes over territorial sovereignty. But the thing is, the public isn't allowed to explore Antarctica. Most countries have classified military and research centers there, and most of the continent is heavily guarded. While you can rent a tour and explore the allocated parts of the continent, free exploration is strictly forbidden. This naturally raises suspicion. Why the secrecy? What's being hidden over there? Are they testing deadly viruses? Do the rumored weather manipulation stations exist? Or are they guarding the entrance to the hollow Earth? It's fun to speculate, but what goes on down there is kept a secret, and Antarctica was still largely unknown. That's all the information that we have for you today. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell so you never miss out on future episodes. And be sure to also tell us what you think about today's content. Everyone's support motivates us to continue delivering quality content and to always improve. As always, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.